Okay, hi everybody. That was a very official sounding countdown that some of us heard that y'all might not have to get this thing started. So let's go. I'm Thomas Fennell. I'm a principal product manager in the Windows platform team. Many of you may have just watched the BRK30 breakout session with Kevin Gallo on Windows app development. We're going to have most of those speakers joining us here today. You can see them in just a second, as well as a great set of other experts to answer any questions you might have about Windows app development or web development or Fluent design or Azure Virtual Desktop, app streaming, like anything in that area. And even if you didn't catch the session that we just had, that's fine too. We're here to answer any general questions that you might have. So, we got a great group of people here. The slides up there to show you some of the folks that are on right now that you can ask questions of. We really appreciate our participation, but it's only going to work if we get your participation too. So please bring those questions. We'll queue them up and we'll open them up live, and we'll just have a good conversation. So yeah, put questions in the chat and we'll try to answer everything that we can. So that's my little preamble. I'm going to quit sharing the slide because that was just to get us started. And let's get moving. I think we've already got one, it looks like, on WebView 2. I'm just going to go ahead and read it, Lindsay. I'm going to throw it to you. Okay, is that cool? Okay, so Lindsay mentioned that WebView 2 would be available for WinUI 2 soon. Any idea what soon means? Does that mean an existing UWP app will be able to upgrade from WebView 1 to WebView 2 without having to rewrite the app as a WinUI 3 app? So yeah, Lindsay, all you.
Yeah, this is a great question since we left our timeline a little bit vague in the talk. Our plan is actually to hit GA for the UWP WebView 2 in WinUI 2 in the first couple weeks of July. So that's what we're targeting. It's actually in preview now. So if you want to try it out, you can go get the latest WinUI 2 preview and start playing with it today. And of course, with all of our releases, it's a quality-driven release. If we find, major issues, we'll delay it a week or two here or there. But we think we have everything buttoned up and ready for July, so super soon. To your second question, yes, this absolutely means you can go use WebView 2 instead of the old Edge HTML WebView that you have today without having to move the whole app forward onto a new framework. That was a pain point we'd heard from a lot of you over the last year or two. And so it's something we really wanted to go address and bring WebView 2 into WinUI 2 to make that transition a bit easier and get you onto a more secure, up-to-date web platform. So hopefully that answers your question and should be great.
Awesome. Thank you, Lindsay. So wait, you're basically telling me that you're going to release something so bright and sunny of an outlook when it actually finally gets bright and sunny in Washington, where we're at.
Exactly.
Like, it's going to be a great thing to coincide. We really appreciate that. So that's all. And we got a nice thank you from the asker. We appreciate that. Really appreciate you asking the question. That was awesome. I think we have another one here that looks like it could go to some of our design friends, maybe. Or if not, let's see. I'm just looking at the queue to make sure I'm being fair here with the ones that have been coming in.
I can take that one, Thomas.
You want to take it, Ryan? Okay.
Yeah, sure.
So the question is, what are the plans to bring the Windows design system to MAUI? Everybody know what MAUI is? Everybody knows MAUI, right? MAUI cross-platform framework that works great on Windows, but other places too. Like, just a little context for folks.
Yeah, MAUI is basically the successor to Xamarin Forms, and it was actually just released. The 1.0 was just released, so very exciting. It's awesome. If you're a .NET developer, you want to do cross-platform development, definitely check that out. The answer to that question is that MAUI actually uses WinUI when those apps are running on Windows, and WinUI embodies the Windows design system, the Fluent design system, and the ideals that we have of great Win 11 apps. And so if you use MAUI to go and write your app and that app's running on Windows, it'll be using WinUI, it'll be using WinUI materials and controls. And that means that you get that sort of Windows design aesthetic sort of through that and automatically. So go check it out. Go check it out. Go check out .NET MAUI if you're a .NET developer and want to do cross-platform development.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate that. So we have reached 3 questions in, and we've got one of the classics here that we're going to have to talk about very briefly. Ryan, and this might be best for you too, but the question is, and I can answer this one a little bit too, because I posted one of the articles about this last year on our GitHub. So is UWP dead? Will you ever support UWP in WinUI 3? If not, will WinUI 2 development continue alongside WinUI 3? I'm going to start with the first one. UWP is not dead. We posted a fairly detailed article on the One App SDK GitHub repo last year that talks about UWP, the investments in the platform, et cetera. I highly recommend that you go check that out. It's pretty easy to find on our repo on the discussions tab. So go check that out for the official answer to is UWP dead? But the short answer is no, it's not dead. There's a lot of people using it that really like it, and they'll continue to love it and use it, and it'll be a great app platform. And like, it's good for the right things that people want to use it for. So please, use it where it makes sense. What about the rest of that, Ryan? You want to take that?
I think you answered it pretty well. Thomas is the OG on this in terms of taking that question. Our platform innovation, really where we're focusing on the native side of the platform, is in the Windows App SDK, and the Windows App SDK targets Win32. So even though UWP isn't dead, we're not going to be doing a lot of UWP advancement and investment in that direction. We're really trying to basically bring all the goodness that the UWP community's had for many years now and try and bring that to Win32 developers so that they can tap into and leverage that that benefit too. So I'll just add that on as well, make that clear.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to throw this one to you too, Ryan, because this is pretty exciting and it's something that really is just happening right now. Any details on Windows App SDK 1.1? I think it's GA this week, isn't it? Leading question.
I don't know. It might be coming out tomorrow. We'll see. We'll see. Might be tomorrow. We're spinning builds and just trying to make sure it passes all the quality checks, but it's coming soon, folks.
You're spinning builds at builds during build.
We're spinning builds at build.
Yeah.
For build. The tangled web we spin.
Yo, dog, I heard you like builds, so I'm spinning you some builds for builds. Wonderful. Do you want to talk about feature set at all, Ryan, like in there?
Yeah, so there's lots of exciting stuff in 1.1. We added app lifecycle APIs so that you can control how your app restarts, especially on a system restart. We've got push notifications that have been added. You have the ability to ship the Windows App SDK as a self-contained stack inside your app now. So if you want to just do a full-blown deployment with the Win App SDK included, rather than referencing the framework package, which is sort of the golden path and the norm, you can do that. WinUI's added some things. We've added Mica and Acrylic. So we're going to have a blog post that goes out and that's going to detail sort of the full list. But yeah, there's a bunch of goodies in there.
Awesome. That is awesome to hear. I'm excited for that 1.1 first release of the year, first major release since 1.0. I'm really looking forward to that. See what else we've got in the queue. I was wondering, so here's one that I think could be interesting because there was a lot covered in that last section, including a bunch of stuff about remote apps as well. And we've got Cam here, so I think this one might be a good one for you, Cam. What's the core difference between Windows 365 and AVD? And it might not hurt to give people just a tiny primer on what those two sets of words mean before you go into answering the question. You're muted. Yes, we got our first one. Yes, we got one. It always happens.
I fell into the trap. So the question is about Windows 365 and Azure Virtual Desktop. So these are both services from Microsoft that organizations can use to deliver Windows apps and desktop experiences that are hosted in the cloud and deliver those experiences to end users on any device anywhere in the world. And so they're actually layered on top of each other. And sorry, I'll just say a little more background on the services. So there are two services that folks use for these cases. Azure Virtual Desktop was introduced at the end of 2019, and it's a bit more of a foundational service that replaces a lot of what an organization who's running a virtualization environment on premises might use, except running that in the cloud. And so they'll take their Citrix or VMware infrastructure and bring that to Azure, or they'll run Microsoft's native infrastructure in Azure to manage VMs, to manage user access, and provide apps and desktops there. Windows 365 is a new service that was introduced last summer, and Windows 365 sits on top of Azure Virtual Desktop and automates a lot of the VM provisioning and VM lifecycle on behalf of the customer and gives them a front end for creating and accessing desktops using Microsoft Endpoint Manager. And so for organizations that are kind of doing more migration and modernization of their VDI on-prem offering presence, we tend to kind of recommend Azure Virtual Desktop for those organizations because it's a more natural shift for them. For organizations that are looking to virtualize Windows in the cloud for new use cases that don't have an on-prem virtualization practice or an existing virtualization practice, Windows 365 can be a bit more approachable because of its focus on endpoint management. And so from a management perspective, they're different, but the underlying experience, your Windows is running in Azure, you're running an app, you're delivering it in a sort of streaming way to your end users, all of that is the same, and it's built on the same underpinnings, the same high performance data centers that we have, the high performance network backplane, all of that Azure compute power that's sitting under these things is the exact same pieces. And so that's a bit of the difference between the two services.
Awesome. Okay, thanks. I mean, there's a lot of, we've seen a pretty awesome uptick in usage in both of those places. And like, Win 365 has been something that has felt sort of magical to me as an experience, like that I never really thought I would see just my whole PC in the cloud. So it's pretty amazing. And obviously we use AVD at Microsoft too. So there's another one in kind of the UI area here that we can talk about. Ryan, maybe for you. It says, I think it says I'll create, but I think it meant like, if I create a new Windows application, should I use WPF or MAUI? Points if you can say what WPF actually stands for, Ryan.
Oh, that's easy. Come on. Windows Presentation Foundation. What do I look like here, Thomas?
All right.
All right. Great question. I always get asked this. I always get asked various versions of this question. Should I use WinUI? Should I use whatever? WPF versus MAUI. Well, I mean, the answer to every one of these questions is always, it depends, and it depends on your situation. WPF is a very mature stack. It's a great stack. It has 20 years of history and is really great for creating very productive apps. And so if you've used WPF in the past and you're asking the question from is it okay for me to make my next app in WPF? The answer is yes. It's absolutely fine to go and use that technology. It's fine. And very, very mature. It's got a great ecosystem around it. One thing that WPF doesn't have is it doesn't have sort of modern Fluent controls. It doesn't have a modern compositor. The technology is dated. And so if your app really highly indexes on user experience, it's trying to be, the latest generation of a UX, a Windows 11 style app, then you're going to have a harder time achieving that with something like WPF. WPF can't do background acrylic and it can't do a bunch of sort of the innovations we've made in the UX space. And that's when you'd want to start looking at something like MAUI between those two options. Because MAUI uses WinUI under the hood, as I mentioned in an earlier answer. And so, you may want to consider going that direction. Obviously, MAUI is newer. They just released a 1.0. There are probably some gremlins in there. So you may hit some of those gremlins, just like we had some gremlins when we released our 1.0 of WinUI 3 back in November. So, you're using a newer technology if you go that route. So a lot of it just depends on what you want to get out of it. Do you want sort of older and stable, or do you want to be on the cutting edge?
Yeah, makes sense. I appreciate you acknowledging we had a few gremlins. I thought we were perfect, Ryan. I'm disappointed.
Oh no, everything you drove, Thomas, was fine. WinUI had some gremlins. So.
Okay, so yeah, I'm not in your review model, Ryan. You don't have to worry about me. Okay, I think I was curious. We've got a couple questions here, kind of focused a little bit on some of the tech aspect of One App SDK. I think maybe you might be good for these, John Wiswall. I think maybe start with the one about does One App SDK only support Microsoft Store apps? Is that the only thing we can do? What about like unpackaged apps, or there's just there's a litany of apps that the world creates and app types. What does it support?
We support all your Windows apps. So whether you are packaged or have a setup.exe or a MSI or literally robocopied off of a USB stick, doesn't matter. We'll support your apps with our 1.1 release. And if you come to the store, then you get all the support of framework packages and our streamlined package deployment for all of our customer base. But you can also host that MSIX in your own CDN as well. So bring your apps. We support it all. And let us know if we need more support for your specific apps. You can find us on our GitHub and file an issue asking for some more interesting kind of app that we haven't supported yet.
Even robo-copied apps.
Absolutely. Xcopy is the best copy.
Xcopy is the only copy. That's the only way to go. If you want your copy to finish anyway, it's the only way to go. What about a little deeper though? Like some folks are asking about language support even to go along with One App SDK. Like what's your language du jour, Jean? Are you writing everything in Rust these days? Is it Rust and only Rust? Is that the plan?
I confess to being a Rust neophyte. I'm a dyed-in-the-wool C++ person, so I'm slowly converting. But yeah, we support natively anything that we have a projection for. So if you've ever looked at our API services for Windows, we produce these metadata-based APIs, WinMDs, the WinRT runtime. That's a metadata description of the API, and so we can project it to whatever language you support. Our major projections right now are C#. We have one for CPP, WinRT, that's C++. We have one for Rust, this Windows-RS. We have one for Python that people are slowly bringing back up to quality. And if you have a language you like to support, like you can build a projection. You can find us on GitHub it's the Microsoft/Xlang project, and ask for support for your favorite language. Doesn't matter, as long as you can generate code for it, we can go ahead and support it. We recently upgraded our support for C# to move away from the older .NET baked into the compiler and the runtime format to our new C# projection, which means we generate all the code, it gets better with every release, and you can just add it to your own application. You can even use the same technology that we use to build these components to build your own components, which means something interesting about sharing your components between different languages and runtimes. Not nearly enough time to talk about that now, but yeah, we support whatever languages you want to, and if we don't support it yet, please ask, and we can help you build a projection for it.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah. Thanks. I'm surprised to hear you admit that you don't know. No, I'm not surprised to hear you be honest about what you're good at and what you're not good at. Just kidding.
I'm not good at a lot of stuff. I at least acknowledge that I'm not good at.
Let's move on. We haven't heard much from our design colleagues who have been patiently listening to us drone on, and so I'd appreciate if we can maybe jump to some of the design questions. I think either Christina or Simone, either one of you feel like you want to speak up to this one, but we've heard, I think a lot, this question specifically says, I've heard of Fluent, what's the relationship with Windows 11? I think a lot of people may have heard of Fluent, and it's actually been around for a little while, but I do think it's good to kind of clarify, like, what does that mean in terms of Windows 11? Is it part of a bigger thing? Like, is it specific? Can you give us some details on that?
Yeah, sure, Thomas, I can take that. So I'll start by giving a little bit of context around what Fluent is and what it means to Microsoft. So Fluent is really Microsoft design system, and it's founded on the shared philosophy on how to build products across the company. And so we're building a lot of great tools and artifacts that help our internal customers, our designers and developers to build better experiences for Windows and all the other platforms that Microsoft experiences live on. Fluent really has a couple of key goals. The first one is to deliver consistent experiences within each platform. We have 5 principles for Fluent that are really foundational around all the experiences that are built at the company. And the first one is natural in every platform. Natural in every platform is particularly meaningful for a platform like Windows because it allows us to really elevate the quality and the craft of our experiences by leaning into more of the driver's seat. As Windows, we own the platform, we own some of what these capabilities could look like. And so coherence within the single platforms, consistency, I should say, within the single platform is one of the goals. And coherence across multiple platforms is the second goal of Fluent. We really want experiences, particularly active experiences that have multiple platform endpoints, to feel like they're part of the same family. So if you're using an Office application on your phone as opposed to your PC, you can still feel the continuity and that familiarity of the user experience. So in that sense, Windows is one of the platforms that embodies Fluent. We think of Windows, in fact, as the best-in-class representation of Fluent. And we're really excited to be in this driver's seat and to continue to evolve the visual language from that lens.
Awesome. Okay. I think if it's okay with you, why don't we go just a little deeper there, because there's kind of like a follow-on one. Well, it's related. Like, what are the key things that I should do? The specific question is, what are the key things I should do to make my app look great on Windows 11?
Sure. Awesome. That's a great question. And it's a question that we want to give as much clarity around as possible, because really, it's super important for us to give and empower developers to build the best experiences that they can in Windows 11. So with Windows 11, we did a lot of great visual updates that you've seen in the session. And there are some that become more pervasive and more apparent. So if I was to kind of give a short answer to the top 3 things that you should pay attention to, there's, first of all, I would say thinking about your app layout and making sure that you're starting from one of the standardized app layouts. Thinking about how title bar, for example, fits inside of your application, making sure that your commanding areas are following the patterns that are common in Windows 11, making sure that you use, for example, nav view whenever appropriate on your in your experiences. We talked about WinUI a lot. WinUI and the Windows App SDK are one of our main vehicles to deliver this type of coherence inside of your application. So if you're not using WinUI today, definitely consider switching to it. Or if you're already using WinUI, consider upgrading to 2.6 or greater, because that's going to have all the new visual updates that are coming with Windows 11. It's going to really help your app feel at home on Windows 11. It's going to look amazing. The third thing I would say is making sure that you're subscribing to the right fonts. We know that typography is super important when it comes down to the experience of an application. In fact, is the most pervasive visual element across most of the applications that we see customers use on a daily basis. And so updating to Segoe UI variable and Segoe Fluent icons, which are the 2 new typefaces that we ship with Windows 11, is going to deliver a ton of value to your customers. All these updates, by the way, should happen automatically if you're using the default system fonts already and you're running your app on Windows 11. And then the last thing I would mention is materials. We've done a lot of great work around materials for this version of Windows. And while we know that acrylic is something that is highly loved and coveted by developers and customers alike, we know that there are some constraints and some limitations when it comes down to its performance. And so we introduced this new material called Mica, which helps your application feel more aligned and connected with the environment that is surrounded. So it really picks up this nice hue from the wallpaper, and it helps your application window feel like it's focused as opposed to when it's not in focus. And so adding Mica to the root of your application is going to really help elevate the experience of your app on Windows 11.
Awesome. I appreciate all of that, Simone. And also, you've finally taught me how to say Segoe instead of Segoe, which I feel like people could have told me by now. If anybody really wanted to, like somebody could have told me I was saying it wrong all these years.
We didn't want to stop you.
Oh, God. It's like when I've got something in my teeth. Okay. Shifting gears a little bit. Cam, there was an interesting one for you that I'm going to do a little bit of interpretation on, because I think I know what it means. But it says, what is the future of Windows Remote App via remote desktop farm, which I think maybe means like on-prem. Like what's the future versus the on-prem stuff we used to have in the past. Oh, you're muted, buddy.
I'm so good at staying on mute. That's a great question. So yeah, so when people use remote desktop on premises, typically they have a large bank of server grade hardware that they operate, and they deliver remote desktop to their users. And in this case, the question I think was remote apps specifically. So with Azure Virtual Desktop, you can deliver remote apps or remote desktops, and that's one of the differences between the two services. So you can deliver remote apps with Azure Virtual Desktop, and if you have an on-prem facility that you want to be able to modernize, and you want to keep the building, you want to make sure that you have control over the physical infrastructure that the VMs are running on, we have a product called Azure Stack HCI, which lets you run Azure workloads on on-prem server-grade hardware in a way that's similar to what you would use with Windows Server as a hypervisor. And so you can actually run Azure Stack HCI as a host OS on that hardware, and then you can use Azure Virtual Desktop to deploy VMs and manage VMs on that hardware. And so you can deploy your remote apps on Azure Stack HCI and manage access to them via Azure Virtual Desktop. And so you get the same end user experience you would with Azure Virtual Desktop in the cloud. You get the same sort of connection brokers, the sort of low latency experience that you have, but you have a bit more control over where the app is running. And so if that matters to you, if you need to control the network environment or the physical location of the data your app operates on, if you're operating in like a regulated industry, that's often a use case for this, you can use Azure Stack HCI to solve that problem.
Awesome. Okay. Very, very cool. Thank you for the detail there, Cam. That's good stuff. I've just found one that I kind of skipped over that sort of fit in with the Fluent conversation we're just having. So I'll back up to that and ask it actually to you, Lindsay, because it's about Fluent, but also about PWA. So basically, if I want to incorporate Fluent Design System in my PWA, which front-end framework can I use?
Yeah, so the best place to actually learn more about this is a website we have, www.fast.design, which provides a bunch of different UI patterns and controls that you can use with the web that align with the Fluent Design System. And if you check out that site, you'll see that this actually supports a lot of the existing web frameworks, Angular, React, all that kind of stuff. And helps you build Fluent Design UI into your website or web app using all of those existing frameworks. And so as you look at that, the other aspect of a PWA is also, of course, the shell Chrome that's drawn by the browser. And so, of course, in Edge, we're going to keep working on that, making sure by default your title bars use Mica, things like that. But of course, for inside the app frame and for your app's UI, that's the best place to get started.
Okay, I'm going to keep you on the line here then, Lindsay, as we go forward, because there's another PWA question I think is worth asking. It says, are PWAs able to call native Windows APIs?
Yeah, so this is one that comes up a lot because our previous version of PWAs with Edge HTML were packaged apps that could call WinRT APIs. Going forward, that's not our strategy for PWAs since we moved to the Chromium project. We've been sticking with the more web standard definition of PWAs, and our strategy there is to keep evolving the web platform to bring more native-like capabilities into the web platform, into PWAs working across, all browsers and all operating systems. Our strategy, if you really truly need web and native in the same app, is to stick with WebView 2 and the existing suite of native frameworks that we offer. So we think we have a great story there, but if there's something that doesn't meet your needs, we'd love to hear more about it and figure out how we either bring it to the web platform or make it easier for you to do across the web native boundary in some of those other app types.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Thank you. So we're just at time right now. I just want to take a quick second to say thank you to all of you wonderful folks out there asking questions. We really appreciate that and keeping the engagement going. Thank you for asking good questions. Thank you for asking hard questions. That's awesome. If you have more questions on, for example, One APP SDK, you can go to our GitHub, aka to MS-WAC One APP SDK. And there's other resources that we can post and share with people as well. But thank you, Christina, John, Cam, Lindsay, Ryan, Simone. I really appreciate that you did all the hard work and I didn't have to answer any questions. That was really nice of you. Thank you very, very much. I hope folks have a good rest of their conference and we look forward to hearing from you on this and other topics. Reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Talk to you later.